Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. When a narcissist decides to discard someone, it often feels like a betrayal, a sharp rejection that leaves the victim reeling, unsure of what just happened. However, it's important to understand that this behavior is not about the person they've discarded. It's about the narcissist's need for control, validation, and self-preservation. Their emotional landscape is deeply flawed, and their actions are a reflection of their own internal chaos, rather than a judgment on the person they've cast aside. At the core of narcissism is an overwhelming insecurity. Narcissists often present themselves as confident and superior, but beneath the surface, they are fragile and constantly battling feelings of inadequacy. They need to maintain a facade of perfection and control in order to feel secure. Anyone who threatens that, whether by showing empathy, setting boundaries, or exposing the narcissist's flaws, becomes a potential target for discard. Narcissists see vulnerability in others as a weakness to exploit, and once they have drained someone emotionally or gotten everything they can from them, they will cast them aside without a second thought. The discard phase is often a part of a narcissist's cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard. Initially, the narcissist may idealize the person, showering them with affection and praise. This is part of the love bombing phase, where the victim is made to feel like they are the most important person in the narcissist's life. However, once the narcissist feels they've gained enough control, or once the victim starts asserting themselves or showing signs of emotional independence, the narcissist begins the process of devaluation. The once idealized person is now seen as a mere object, one whose value is no longer needed. The discard itself is rarely about the person they're cutting off. Narcissists discard others because they see them as disposable, and once they have used them to serve their own emotional needs, they move on to the next source of validation. It's not about you, it's about their constant need to feel powerful and in control, and their inability to maintain a real, deep connection with anyone. For those on the receiving end, it can feel like a cruel, unprovoked attack. The suddenness of the discard leaves the victim confused, hurt, and struggling to make sense of the situation. But it's vital to understand that the narcissist's behavior is not personal. They are driven by a need to protect themselves, to defend their fragile ego, and to remain in control at all costs. In fact, the discard is often their way of maintaining a sense of power, even if it means hurting someone in the process. Victims may find themselves questioning everything they did in the relationship, replaying moments in their minds, wondering where things went wrong. It's important to understand that nothing you did or didn't do caused the discard. It's a tactic, a tool used by narcissists to keep themselves emotionally distant and protected. The discard is a way for them to maintain control of the narrative and avoid any confrontation with their true selves. Once the discard occurs, many narcissists will attempt to minimize the emotional toll it has taken on the victim. They may act indifferent or even go so far as to gaslight the victim, making them feel as if they're the one in the wrong. In reality, the narcissist has likely moved on to another victim, or is seeking out new sources of admiration and validation. This new source will likely go through the same cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard, reinforcing the narcissist's need for power and control. In the aftermath, it's easy to become consumed by feelings of guilt, shame, and confusion. Victims may feel as if they weren't good enough, or that something they did caused the narcissist to leave. But it's crucial to realize that these feelings are not a reflection of the truth. The narcissist's behavior is a direct result of their dysfunction, not a reflection of the victim's worth. The discard, while painful, is often a blessing in disguise. It's an opportunity for the victim to break free from the toxic cycle and start healing. It's a chance to regain control, rediscover personal worth, and find peace. It's not about you, it's about their inability to form healthy, lasting connections with anyone. Once you understand that, the path to healing becomes clearer. The narcissist's discard is not a reflection of your value, but rather an indication of their inability to love or connect on any meaningful level. When a narcissist falls in love or becomes emotionally attached, it often feels like a twisted paradox. On one hand, they may seem charming, loving, and devoted, but on the other hand, their actions rarely align with genuine emotional connection. This is because narcissists are fundamentally incapable of forming true, selfless love. Their version of love is conditional, transactional, and heavily based on how much validation and admiration they can extract from others. A narcissist's emotional makeup is deeply rooted in insecurity and fear. They are driven by the need to maintain their image of superiority and perfection. As a result, their love is not unconditional or based on mutual respect. Instead, it revolves around the narcissist's need to be adored and admired. When they enter a relationship, they are not looking for a partnership. They are seeking someone to reflect their idealized self-image, someone who will bolster their fragile sense of worth. In the beginning, when a narcissist is infatuated with someone, they can be incredibly charming. This is often referred to as the love bombing phase, where the narcissist showers the other person with affection, attention, and flattery. The victim may feel like they've found someone who understands them, someone who makes them feel special. But this intense idealization doesn't last. It's not sustainable, because the narcissist is not genuinely interested in the other person as an equal or in developing a healthy, balanced relationship. Instead, they are preoccupied with their own needs and desires. Once the narcissist feels that they have gained control, they begin to devalue their partner. They may start to criticize, belittle, or withdraw their affection. This sudden shift can be confusing and painful for the victim, especially because the narcissist's behavior seems to come out of nowhere. But the truth is, the narcissist was never truly capable of loving the victim in the first place. Their love was a tool for self-validation, and once they felt secure or tired of the relationship, they moved on to the next source of admiration. The narcissist's inability to love is tied to their deep fear of vulnerability. Love requires a certain level of openness, trust, and emotional risk. However, a narcissist is unable to be truly vulnerable because doing so would expose their weaknesses and challenges their carefully constructed image. For a narcissist, love isn't about the well-being of the other person. It's about maintaining control and feeling superior. This creates a toxic cycle in the relationship. When the narcissist feels that they are no longer receiving enough admiration, or if their partner becomes too independent, the narcissist will retreat or punish them. The partner might be made to feel unworthy, unloved, or at fault for the breakdown in the relationship. This constant shifting between idealization and devaluation leaves the victim in a state of emotional whiplash, unsure of where they stand or whether they are truly loved. The narcissist's love is often shallow and conditional. It is based on what the other person can do for them, rather than a deep connection or mutual respect. They may say all the right things, promise the world, and even appear to be emotionally invested, but their actions rarely match their words. They may manipulate their partner into believing they are truly loved, but in reality, the narcissist's love is a reflection of their own needs, not a selfless bond with another person. For the victim, this creates a profound sense of confusion and self-doubt. They may question their worth, wondering why the narcissist can't seem to love them despite all the efforts they put into the relationship. They might blame themselves, thinking that they are not enough, not good enough, or not worthy of real love. But the truth is, the narcissist is incapable of real love. They are emotionally stunted, and their need for validation and control overrides any chance of a genuine connection. Moreover, the narcissist's emotional manipulation can make it even more difficult for the victim to recognize this truth. Narcissists are experts at gaslighting, convincing their partners that their perception of reality is flawed. They might tell the victim that they are imagining things, that they are too sensitive, or that they're overreacting. This leaves the victim questioning their own sanity as they try to make sense of the emotional turmoil that the narcissist causes. Over time, the victim may begin to lose themselves in the relationship. Their sense of self-worth becomes increasingly tied to the narcissist's approval, and they may go to great lengths to keep the narcissist happy, to avoid conflict, or to try to earn their love. But the truth remains that no amount of effort will change the narcissist's inability to love. The narcissist's emotional void cannot be filled by their partner. It is a problem within themselves. In many cases, the narcissist will discard the victim when they are no longer able to serve as a source of validation. This is the cold, brutal reality of being in a relationship with a narcissist. Once the victim has been emotionally drained or their value has diminished in the narcissist's eyes, they are discarded. This abandonment can feel like a crushing blow, leaving the victim to wonder what went wrong and why they were never enough. However, the narcissist's discard is not a reflection of the victim's worth. It is simply a reflection of the narcissist's inability to truly connect with anyone. The narcissist is incapable of seeing the other person as a whole, complex human being. They view others as objects to be used for their own needs, and when they no longer need them, they move on without a second thought. For those left behind, the journey to healing can be long and painful, but understanding the narcissist's inability to love is the first step toward freeing oneself from the emotional prison they've created. It's important to remember that the narcissist's actions are driven by their own deep-seated fears and insecurities, not by any fault of the victim's. The healing process involves recognizing that the narcissist's love was never real and that the victim's worth was never tied to their approval. The truth about their inability to love begins to unfold in a way that's undeniable, not just for their victim, but also for the narcissists themselves, though they may never fully acknowledge it. As time progresses, the consequences of their self-destructive patterns begin to take their toll. The narcissist's need for admiration, control, and validation will eventually catch up with them. This is where the cracks in their carefully constructed facade become evident, leading to their eventual downfall. The narcissist's inability to sustain healthy, balanced relationships often means that, over time, they burn bridges with those around them. As they discard one partner after another or manipulate friends and family to serve their needs, they create a trail of emotional destruction. People begin to recognize the narcissist's patterns of behavior. They see the signs, the empty promises, the unending need for validation, the emotional instability, and they start to distance themselves. At first, the narcissist might not notice the growing isolation. After all, they still have people to admire them, or at least they think they do. But as the narcissist alienates those closest to them, the foundation of their support system begins to crumble. Those who were once drawn into their orbit become disillusioned, recognizing that the narcissist never truly cared about them. This creates a downward spiral. The narcissist is left with fewer and fewer sources of admiration, and their emotional void becomes even more apparent. They are forced to confront the reality that their superficial relationships are empty and unsatisfying. But the narcissist can never admit to themselves that they are the cause of their own downfall. Instead, they will project the blame onto others, often scapegoating their former partners, family members, or friends for betraying them or not living up to their expectations. The narcissist's pride is too fragile for them to take responsibility for their actions. In the face of rejection, the narcissist may attempt to rekindle old relationships, reaching out to former partners in an effort to fill the void. But by now, the emotional damage they have inflicted is often too severe to heal. The victim may have already recognized the narcissist's true nature and, after a period of emotional recovery, may have moved on. The narcissist's attempts at re-entering these relationships are often rejected, further exacerbating their sense of failure and isolation. One of the most painful aspects of dealing with a narcissist is witnessing how little they are able to learn from their mistakes. Unlike emotionally mature individuals who can reflect on their past behaviors, take responsibility, and strive to grow, a narcissist is incapable of true self-reflection. Their ego is too fragile, and their constant need for validation prevents them from looking inward. Even when they face the consequences of their actions, be it the loss of relationships, reputation, or opportunities, they rarely change. Instead, they blame others, downplay their mistakes, or even gaslight those around them to maintain their image. As the narcissist's relationships continue to deteriorate, they may find themselves in a state of crisis. Without the constant supply of admiration and validation from others, they are forced to confront their own emptiness. This can lead to periods of depression, anxiety, and self-loathing, though these feelings are often masked by further attempts at self-aggrandizement. The narcissist may turn to new sources of validation, such as pursuing new relationships or striving for even more impressive achievements, all in an effort to fill the void they feel inside. But this cycle is never ending. The emptiness inside them cannot be filled by external sources. Despite the destruction they cause, narcissists are often blind to the long-term consequences of their behavior. They may continue to move from one relationship to another, one social circle to the next, without ever realizing the damage they've done. Their pattern of self-destruction continues until it leads to complete emotional burnout, often leaving them alone, bitter and resentful of the people who have distanced themselves from them. It's important to recognize that the narcissist's behavior is driven by deep-seated fears and insecurities. They crave admiration because they feel fundamentally unworthy. Their need to control others is a defense mechanism designed to shield them from the vulnerability of true emotional intimacy. While it may be tempting to feel pity for the narcissist, it's crucial to understand that their behavior is not about love. It's about maintaining power and protecting their fragile ego. The final phase of the narcissist's emotional journey is often one of loneliness and despair. They may eventually find themselves isolated, with no one left to feed their need for validation. The relationships they have destroyed are beyond repair, and their sense of superiority has been shattered by the very people they tried to manipulate. In the end, the narcissist is left with nothing but the hollow shell of their own ego, unable to love and unable to be loved. For those who have been in relationships with narcissists, healing is a long and difficult process, but it is possible. Recognizing that the narcissist's inability to love is rooted in their own inner turmoil can provide clarity. The victim can begin to rebuild their life, free from the emotional manipulation and toxicity that defined the relationship. Ultimately, the narcissist's downfall is inevitable. Their inability to form genuine connections, their need for control, and their refusal to take responsibility for their actions will catch up with them. As they face the consequences of their behavior, they may never fully understand the damage they have caused, but for those who have endured their manipulations, the journey toward healing and reclaiming self-worth can be the first step toward moving forward. The journey of recovery for those who have been in a relationship with a narcissist is arduous, but ultimately transformative. It begins with recognizing that the pain, confusion, and emotional turmoil they experienced were not their fault. It was the narcissist's need for control, their lack of empathy, and their constant pursuit of validation that caused the harm. For many victims, this realization marks the beginning of reclaiming their own lives. Healing from narcissistic abuse is not a linear process. It involves acknowledging the depth of the manipulation and coming to terms with the fact that the narcissist's love, if it can even be called love, was always conditional. It was never about mutual respect, support, or care. It was about the narcissist's need to feel superior. This understanding is painful, but it's also empowering because it helps victims see that their worth was never dependent on the narcissist's perception of them. They are valuable, whole, and deserving of real, unconditional love. The first step in the healing process is cutting ties with the narcissist, which, though difficult, is crucial for emotional recovery. For many, this is the hardest part, leaving behind someone who once seemed to be the center of their world, someone who had manipulated their emotions and created a false sense of intimacy. However, the moment a person breaks free from the narcissist's influence, they begin to regain control over their own life. The narcissist's voice, which once dictated how they felt about themselves, begins to fade into the background. No contact is often the most effective method for severing the emotional ties to a narcissist. This means not just physically removing them from one's life, but also mentally detaching from the unhealthy thoughts and patterns the narcissist implanted. For victims, this can be a difficult transition because the narcissist has likely convinced them that they are somehow responsible for the relationship's failure, or that they are incapable of being loved without the narcissist's validation. It's essential to challenge these beliefs and replace them with the understanding that the narcissist's behavior was a reflection of their own insecurity, not the victim's worth. As healing begins, victims often experience a range of emotions, including guilt, shame, anger, and sadness. They may even question their own perception of reality, as narcissists are master manipulators who excel at gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which the narcissist causes their victim to doubt their own memories, feelings, or perception of events. Over time, this can lead victims to feel unsure of themselves, questioning their instincts and their ability to trust others. Overcoming gaslighting is one of the most significant challenges in healing, as it requires reestablishing trust in one's own thoughts and feelings. This is where therapy, particularly trauma-informed therapy, can be invaluable. Therapists can help survivors of narcissistic abuse work through their trauma, provide validation, and teach coping strategies for dealing with the lasting emotional effects. In therapy, victims can unpack the emotional manipulation they endured, recognize patterns, and develop healthier boundaries in future relationships. They can learn how to reclaim their power, and with time come to understand that they are worthy of love, not because of what they can do for someone, but because of who they are. In addition to therapy, journaling can be a powerful tool for healing. Writing down thoughts, feelings, and reflections can help survivors process their experiences and gain insight into their emotional responses. Journaling allows individuals to track their progress and see how far they've come over time. It can also serve as a reminder that they are no longer defined by the narcissist's influence, but by their own strength and resilience. One of the most important aspects of recovery is rebuilding self-esteem. Narcissists often target individuals with high empathy, individuals who are compassionate, caring, and selfless. These qualities are often manipulated by the narcissist to serve their own needs. Over time, this emotional exploitation can leave the victim feeling worthless, as if they have nothing of value to offer except what they can give to others. In healing, victims must rediscover their inherent value. They must remember that they are worthy of love, respect, and happiness just as they are. Rebuilding self-esteem involves setting boundaries, practicing self-care, and importantly, forgiving oneself for staying in the relationship longer than they should have. As healing continues, victims can also begin to create new, healthier relationships. They learn to trust again, not by opening up to just anyone, but by discerning who deserves their trust. They may even become advocates for others who are going through similar experiences, using their story to educate others about narcissistic abuse and how to protect themselves. This empowerment is often one of the most transformative outcomes of recovery, as it turns a painful experience into a powerful source of strength. Over time, the pain from the narcissistic relationship begins to lessen. The wounds, though deep, begin to heal. Survivors may look back on the relationship with a sense of clarity, realizing that the love they thought they had was never truly love at all. It was a warped, one-sided illusion created by the narcissist to fulfill their own needs. But in that realization, they find freedom. They find that they are capable of experiencing authentic love with someone who values them for who they are, not for what they can provide. Healing from narcissistic abuse is a journey of rediscovery. It is a process of reclaiming one's power, voice, and identity. It is about learning that self-worth does not come from external validation, but from the deep understanding that one is inherently deserving of love and respect. Narcissists may spend their lives searching for validation, but survivors of narcissistic abuse find it within themselves. They recognize that true love and happiness are not dependent on anyone else's perception of them, but on the love and respect they give themselves. As the narcissist continues their path of self-destruction, those who have escaped their grip stand as living proof that healing is possible. The narcissist may never understand the damage they've caused or recognize the pain they've inflicted, but for those who have freed themselves from their toxic grasp, the future is full of possibility. With every step forward, they leave the narcissist and the abuse further behind. When we talk about relationships, we often think of the emotional bond that connects two people. This bond, when nurtured properly, can lead to growth, mutual respect, and a fulfilling life together. However, what happens when that bond becomes strained? What happens when the relationship turns toxic and one or both individuals can no longer thrive within it? This is a common dilemma many face, but the way each person handles this challenge can differ greatly. For most people, leaving a relationship is not an easy decision. Emotions are entangled, and there is always the hope that things will improve. Many people spend years waiting for their partner to change, hoping that with time, things will get better. Some may even endure manipulation, neglect, and emotional abuse because they believe in the possibility of change. However, for those who possess a certain level of self-awareness, those who are empaths, for example, there comes a point when they recognize that continuing the relationship no longer serves their well-being. An empath is someone who is highly sensitive to the emotions and energy of others. They have an innate ability to tune into the emotional states of the people around them, often feeling the emotions of others as their own. This heightened sensitivity can be both a gift and a curse. On one hand, empaths can form deep, meaningful connections with others, offering support and care. On the other hand, this same sensitivity can make them vulnerable to emotional exhaustion, especially in toxic relationships. It is precisely this heightened sensitivity that allows empaths to recognize when a relationship is no longer healthy. While others may try to justify staying in a relationship due to history, comfort, or even fear of loneliness, an empath understands that self-preservation is essential. They may feel the weight of the emotional toll that a toxic relationship is taking on them, whether it's through feelings of anxiety, depression, or a constant sense of depletion. In the context of recognizing when to move on, an empath's ability to sense these emotional shifts is a crucial factor. Unlike others who may ignore or suppress their feelings, empaths are attuned to the subtle changes in their emotional state. They can feel when the relationship is no longer providing the support or love that it once did. This is often the first step in recognizing that it's time to move on, acknowledging that the relationship has run its course and that continuing it would only harm both parties. But it's not just empaths who possess this ability. Many people, whether they identify as empaths or not, eventually reach a point where they realize that they deserve better. This realization doesn't always come easily, and it often involves a significant amount of introspection. Some may stay in a relationship because they fear change, while others may feel obligated to remain for the sake of children, family, or social expectations. It is here that the strength to move on truly manifests. For the chosen ones, as some people refer to those with a heightened sense of self-awareness, the ability to leave a relationship is not just about recognizing when it's no longer healthy. It's about taking action. This is a crucial distinction. Recognizing that a relationship is toxic is only the first step. The real challenge comes in making the decision to walk away, and that is where many people falter. They may feel trapped by their own emotions, by the expectations of others, or by a sense of duty. However, for those who have developed the strength to move on, the decision to leave is not a sign of weakness, but of immense emotional maturity. It is the recognition that continuing to invest in a relationship that no longer brings joy, support, or growth is detrimental to their mental and emotional well-being. It is the understanding that they deserve better, that they are worthy of a relationship that is mutually fulfilling, where both partners support and uplift each other. This is where the concept of emotional self-awareness comes into play. Emotional self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand one's own emotions, as well as how they influence thoughts and behaviors. This awareness allows individuals to make more informed, intentional decisions about their lives, especially when it comes to relationships. People who possess emotional self-awareness are less likely to be swayed by emotional manipulation or coercion, and they are more likely to make choices that align with their values and well-being. For those who are struggling with the decision to leave a toxic relationship, it can be helpful to start by acknowledging their emotions and identifying the patterns that have led them to this point. Often, people stay in unhealthy relationships because they have become accustomed to the dysfunction. They may not even realize how much it's affecting them until they take a step back and reflect on their emotional state. Once you recognize the emotional toll that a toxic relationship is taking on you, it becomes easier to detach from it. This is where the strength to move on truly begins. The first step is acknowledging the impact that the relationship has had on your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Whether it's constant anxiety, feelings of sadness, or a general sense of being drained, it's important to recognize that these are signs that the relationship is no longer serving you. The next step is to let go of any guilt or shame that may arise from the decision to leave. Many people, especially empaths, feel a deep sense of responsibility for the well-being of others. They may feel guilty for choosing their own happiness over the needs of their partner, even if that partner has not treated them well. This is where emotional self-awareness becomes a tool for healing. By understanding that your happiness and well-being are just as important as anyone else's, you can begin to let go of the guilt that often accompanies the decision to leave. It's also important to recognize that moving on does not mean abandoning the person you were once close to. It simply means acknowledging that the relationship has run its course and that it is no longer fulfilling or healthy. The relationship may have been wonderful at one point, and there may have been good times, but holding on to those memories at the expense of your current happiness is not a productive way to move forward. In fact, letting go of a toxic relationship is often the healthiest thing you can do, both for yourself and for the other person. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is to walk away. This allows both individuals the space to heal and grow separately, rather than continuing to live in a cycle of dysfunction. For empaths, this can be a particularly difficult realization because they may feel the emotional weight of the other person's pain. However, it's important to understand that staying in the relationship out of a sense of duty or guilt only prolongs the suffering for both parties. As you begin to recognize the strength to move on, it's important to remind yourself that your emotional health and well-being should be your top priority. Moving on is not about being selfish, it's about recognizing your own worth and taking the necessary steps to protect your emotional energy. It's about recognizing that you deserve a life filled with love, respect, and mutual support, and that you do not have to settle for anything less. Once the decision is made to move on from a toxic relationship, the journey of healing and self-discovery begins. This part of the process is often the most challenging, but also the most rewarding. It requires courage, resilience, and a deep commitment to reclaiming one's emotional and mental well-being. For those who have spent years in a toxic relationship, the transition from dependency to independence can feel overwhelming. But it is also a necessary step towards self-empowerment. The healing process does not happen overnight. It is a gradual journey that involves rediscovering who you are outside of the relationship, processing the emotional wounds caused by the toxicity, and rebuilding your sense of self-worth. For many empaths, this process may be especially difficult because they have spent so much time focusing on the needs of others that they have neglected their own emotional needs. Now, the challenge is to turn inward and focus on self-care and self-love. The first step in the healing process is accepting that healing is not linear. There will be days when you feel strong, determined, and at peace with your decision to move on. On other days, you may feel overwhelmed by sadness, regret, or even longing for the relationship. These feelings are normal and should not be viewed as setbacks. Healing is a non-linear journey that involves ups and downs, moments of clarity and moments of doubt. The important thing is to keep moving forward, one step at a time, and to trust that the process will lead to a better, healthier version of yourself. One of the most important aspects of healing is allowing yourself to grieve the end of the relationship. Even if the relationship was toxic, it is still normal to experience a sense of loss. This may seem counterintuitive, but grief is a natural response to any significant change or loss, including the end of a relationship. The grieving process allows you to acknowledge the emotional pain you've experienced and begin to release it. By grieving the loss of the relationship, you can free yourself from the emotional baggage that may have been holding you back from moving forward. For empaths, grieving may be a more intense experience. Because they are so in tune with the emotions of others, they may feel the loss of the relationship more deeply. They may also experience a sense of guilt or responsibility for the other person's pain. However, it's important to remember that healing requires self-compassion. You cannot heal if you continue to carry the emotional burden of the other person's emotions. It is okay to feel sad, but it is equally important to prioritize your own healing and emotional well-being. During this phase of healing, self-care becomes paramount. For many, the act of self-care may feel foreign, especially if they have spent years prioritizing someone else's needs over their own. But learning to practice self-care is a crucial part of the healing process. Self-care can take many forms, from physical activities like exercise and eating nourishing food, to emotional practices like journaling, meditation, or talking to a therapist. Whatever form it takes, self-care is about creating space for yourself to heal and regain your emotional balance. Empaths, in particular, benefit from practices that help them re-establish their emotional boundaries. In toxic relationships, boundaries are often blurred, and empaths may become so immersed in the emotional world of their partner that they lose sight of their own needs. Rebuilding emotional boundaries is an essential part of self-care for empaths, and it can be a powerful way to protect their emotional energy as they move forward. Another key aspect of the healing journey is reframing the narrative around the relationship. After spending so much time in a toxic dynamic, it can be easy to fall into the trap of blaming yourself or feeling like you failed. However, it's essential to remember that toxic relationships are rarely the fault of one person alone. In many cases, the dynamics of the relationship, manipulation, gaslighting, emotional abuse, contributed to the breakdown. Reframing the narrative means acknowledging that you did your best and that it is not a failure to recognize when it is time to let go. This reframing process also involves shifting your perspective on the past. Instead of viewing the relationship as a source of regret or shame, it can be helpful to see it as a lesson. Every experience, even painful ones, can teach us something valuable. Whether it's a deeper understanding of ourselves, an awareness of the red flags to watch out for in the future, or a renewed sense of self-worth, there is always something to learn from the past. By reframing the relationship as a lesson, you can release the grip of negative emotions and begin to focus on the lessons that will help you grow moving forward. As you continue along the healing path, one of the most empowering things you can do is reconnect with your passions, interests, and goals. In toxic relationships, it is common for individuals to lose sight of their own aspirations and desires. The constant emotional turmoil and manipulation can make it difficult to think about anything outside of the relationship. But now that you are free, there is space to rediscover what truly makes you happy. Reconnecting with your passions may involve exploring new hobbies, reigniting old ones, or pursuing personal or professional goals that were once put on hold. This is a time to focus on your own growth and rediscovery. For empaths, this may also involve connecting with like-minded individuals who support and understand their unique sensitivity. Surrounding yourself with people who uplift and encourage you can be incredibly healing. At this point in the healing process, many individuals begin to rebuild their sense of self-worth. After enduring the emotional toll of a toxic relationship, it is common to feel like a shell of who you once were. The constant undermining, criticism, and manipulation can erode your confidence and self-esteem. But healing is about reclaiming your sense of worth and recognizing that you are deserving of love, respect, and happiness. This may involve challenging the negative beliefs that were instilled during the relationship and replacing them with positive affirmations of your value. This is a time for self-empowerment. It is about reclaiming your voice, your boundaries, and your life. The more you nurture your self-worth, the easier it becomes to recognize toxic behavior in the future and avoid falling into the same traps. You have the power to decide what is acceptable in your relationships, and the more you honor your worth, the more others will respect it as well. As the healing process continues, one of the most profound aspects of recovery is the rediscovery of love. Not just love for others, but most importantly, love for oneself. For those who have been in toxic relationships, love may have come to feel like a complicated and painful experience. The idea of trusting another person, of allowing yourself to be vulnerable, may seem daunting, if not impossible. However, the journey toward healing ultimately leads to a place where you can reclaim love in its purest form. During the healing process, it is essential to recognize that the capacity to love has not been lost. Toxic relationships, especially those with narcissists, often manipulate the concept of love, distorting it into something unhealthy, controlling, and self-serving. The emotional damage caused by such relationships may leave a person feeling as though love is something to be feared. But love, when it is healthy, mutual, and unconditional, is still within reach. To rediscover love, it's necessary to first love yourself. This isn't just about self-care or practicing affirmations. It's about deeply respecting who you are and what you stand for. It's about recognizing your worth, not because of what you can give to others, but simply because you exist. When you love yourself fully and unconditionally, you create a foundation that allows for healthy relationships to form in the future. This love is not about perfection, but about accepting yourself in all your complexity and embracing your own journey. One of the most significant parts of self-love is learning how to set healthy boundaries. For empaths, this can be particularly challenging, as they may be more prone to overgiving and neglecting their own needs. Healthy boundaries are not walls to keep people out. Rather, they are safeguards to ensure that relationships remain balanced and respectful. They protect your emotional space and help you avoid repeating past mistakes. By setting clear and firm boundaries, you can avoid being manipulated and can foster relationships that are built on mutual respect and understanding. With the rediscovery of self-love and healthy boundaries comes the possibility of entering new, healthier relationships. But before embarking on new romantic endeavors, it is important to reflect on what you truly want from a partner and relationship. Toxic relationships often leave individuals with unrealistic expectations, confusing love with control or manipulation. It's crucial to take time to evaluate what healthy love looks like for you. Healthy love is based on respect, trust, mutual support, and equality. It is not about losing oneself in the other person, but about finding balance between two individuals who can both stand strong as individuals while supporting each other as partners. It's about communication, understanding, and growth. Healthy love allows you to be your authentic self without fear of judgment or rejection. For empaths, healthy love is also about finding someone who understands and values your sensitivity. It's about being with someone who respects your need for emotional space and who does not take advantage of your nurturing nature. In the right relationship, you are free to express your feelings, be vulnerable, and share your dreams without fear of being judged or manipulated. As you enter new relationships, you may notice that there is a shift in the way you approach love. Gone are the days of accepting mistreatment or sacrificing your happiness for the sake of keeping the peace. Now, you know your worth. You recognize that love should not come at the expense of your mental and emotional health. This newfound understanding helps you to recognize red flags early on and to trust your instincts when something feels off. But the journey of rediscovery does not stop at love. In fact, moving forward after a toxic relationship is an ongoing process of self-discovery, growth, and transformation. The lessons learned from the past relationship, whether it's about setting boundaries, understanding emotional manipulation, or recognizing your own needs, are tools that will serve you well as you continue to navigate life. Embracing change and letting go of the past is another essential part of this journey. Many individuals who leave toxic relationships find that they are not only healing from the emotional wounds inflicted by the partner, but they are also healing from the damage caused by staying in the relationship for so long. There is a sense of liberation that comes with shedding the weight of past pain and trauma. It is like emerging from a fog into clarity. The future is wide open, full of possibilities, and the road ahead is yours to pave. Through this process, individuals often discover a renewed sense of purpose and direction in life. Whether it's pursuing long-forgotten dreams, building a successful career, or nurturing other relationships, the space that was once consumed by toxicity is now filled with the potential for something more positive. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means learning from it and using those lessons to create a better future. The journey from healing to rediscovery is a deeply personal one. And for those who have left toxic relationships, it marks the beginning of a new chapter filled with hope, empowerment, and self-love. While the road to recovery may be long and filled with moments of self-doubt, it is important to remember that healing is not about returning to who you once were. It's about evolving into the person you were always meant to be, a person who is stronger, wiser, and more attuned to their own needs and desires. Through self-care, boundary setting, and the rediscovery of love, you can overcome the scars left by a narcissistic relationship and emerge more resilient than ever. Trust that the process of healing, no matter how difficult, will lead you to a place of peace and fulfillment. You have the strength within you to create the life and relationships you deserve. And remember, this journey is not a destination. It's a process, and every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. The lessons learned from the past will shape the person you are becoming. Embrace that transformation and know that the future is filled with the promise of a healthier, more authentic you.